just like, and think of it as an opportunity to spend a little bit of time just making one or two really good slides that you'll use in your final presentation. This is a way to kind of get you to build your slide deck in pieces. If you haven't emailed me to let me know about the Philly trip next week, please do so. I think I've heard from most of you, but again, I want to know either way if you plan on coming or not, so we can get rides and such. So if you haven't done that, please let me know. Otherwise, it's my pleasure today to introduce Jason Bennett, our Sinus alum, graduated in 2019.
Yes.
2019, math and CS major, or not CS, physics, sorry, math and physics major. And I'll let him tell you a little bit more about what he's doing next year, but he'll talk to us today about graduate school, applying to graduate school.
Yes, because I had the weird opportunity of applying to grad school twice. When I did summer fellows, I was a sophomore. So I did an REU as a junior, not at Ursinus. And through doing the REU, fell in love with that field of physics, and then had this kind of passion for doing it. And as I was starting to look at grad school, I also started to look at the Fulbright. There's this weird, and I'll talk about it at the end, the Fulbright, because I think scholarships like the Fulbright, there are tons of others, Rhodes, the Gates, Cambridge, Schwartzman, many I'm forgetting that are listed here somewhere, that once you've applied to grad school, like there's a ton of overlap between these applications. And weirdly, the application for the Fulbright is very early, like September or October. And so I applied to that before applying to grad school, then applied to grad school because I was like, I'm not going to get the Fulbright. Who I got thanks to Kelly in the back there, because I had Kelly helping me. And so at the advice of advisors, we'll talk about like safety schools and reach schools and things like that. I chose to take a chance and apply again, because having the Fulbright on your resume changes things a little bit. So I did it twice. Before I get into my first error in applying the first time, I just want to kind of set the stage and tell you guys to interrupt me like all the time. I'm sure if you're a sophomore, you have like a little bit less anxiety, but if you're if you're a rising junior, you have a little bit less anxiety about grad school because it's a little bit far off. But if you're a rising senior, I'm sure that you already have questions. So if anyone has questions right now, just shoot them out, because the way that it worked last time, I didn't really, there was no script for last year. This script was entirely me just over the last few days reviewing the YouTube recording right here. And I'll send you guys this PDF. I'll send it to Nick and you guys can share it. It has like little clickable links. I rewatched the recording of it because the path of that talk was entirely dependent on the questions the student asked, and they asked amazing questions. I will make sure to repeat the questions because you can't actually hear the questions on YouTube. So you guys will get access to all that information. So if you ask me a question that I didn't cover last year, I'm just gonna completely negate everything I wrote down here, and we'll focus on your question. So if anyone is like just biting at, I don't know what that's saying. It's biting at the something to ask a question. No, like when you're biting at the chopping at the bit, like a horse. Yes. If anyone is chopping at the bit to ask a question, it's specific, crazy, general, shout them out at any time. Now, go.
Got two.
Go.
Okay.
I like it.
Did your interests and like what you were looking to apply to change between the two times you applied, or was it the same types of programs?
Okay, so the question had a twist. I thought you were going to say, which I was going to launch into a tirade on, was like, how did I discover what kind of research I liked? So that was summer fellows. I did it with here, like the professors who worked here, and because they're awesome professors, I did it. But I knew, within a month that it was awesome and the experience was cool, but I knew that I didn't want to do that for my PhD. But that doesn't matter, because a key thing I want to put out is all research is good research. No matter what you're working on, me doing that told me that I didn't like it. So that's one, we'll get to it when I talk about how do you decide what schools to apply to. Knowing that you don't like one of the categories on US News is I don't know why it's arranged like this. It's algebra, knot theory, and algebraic geometry. If you did your RU in that and you said, wow, that sucks, you're not going to look into that for grad school. When I did my external RU, that's when I found something really cool. So yes and no, it changed for your actual question. It got broader. It didn't change a ton. I think I was still interested in general, the same subfield of physics, but it got broader because I was exposed to more things. For instance, the RU experience was with black holes and gravity, and then the Fulbright was with gravity and Lie algebras and geometry, and then my master's thesis was computer science and condensed matter. So I jumped from thing to thing, usually based on things getting citations, and I'm oh, why did they cite this paper that I'm reading? Oh, it's completely unrelated or not quite. So realizing a lot of those things made me apply a little bit more broadly. And the second question?
Did you have, or do you when you were applying, did you have you kind of answered very disparate interests that you applied to programs that were not kind of all the same field?
No. I, through that RU experience where I was this is pretty cool, I made sure that at least there was, so if it was a safety school, at least one person doing work in that field. If it was a dream school, at least 5 or more people working in that field. But that's the hard part of applying to grad school, figuring out where to apply. And we'll run through it today. That's why it's screen sharing. It's we're gonna go through the whole how to determine what schools to apply to based on your interests. And it doesn't have to be, for instance, if I hadn't had that RU experience, I still would have known what I was interested in. It was confirmed through the RU experience. So the reason I applied to that RU was because I was interested in it. So it was the same kind of field. And so applying to grad school would have been motivated by that as well. So even if you don't, so if you have this idea that you think working with p-adic numbers is what you want to go to grad school for, a number theory, I think, topic. And if you base your search on that, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Even if you think, you don't have a ton of experience with, you didn't do your summer fellows or are you in p-adic numbers, just because there are, as we'll see here, maybe, can I do view all? No, so I'll start doing it as I'm talking, because there are, I think, 120 ranked schools and 180 total. There are a million graduate programs. So if you have anything that you're interested in, use it, because you can't apply to 180 grad schools. That's ridiculous. And so that will get me to one of my first talking points. Also, email me literally for anything. You can, like I said, I'll send this PDF to Nick, so you can just click on that and email me. Money. That was my biggest mess up the first time I did this, because I had the benefit of going somewhere like Ursinus and had financial aid and said, okay, I know I want to go to grad school. and you know, when I was a freshman and hearing about seniors applying, and they were like, oh no, you don't pay for a PhD if you want. Like if you go straight from a bachelor to a PhD, like you don't pay tuition. You get paid to be a TA. And I was like, whoa, what? Like I can go to grad school for free. And so like I dropped everything and went towards that. And knowing that, sure, I'd be living on a budget, but knowing that I wouldn't have expenses, I thought, okay, what's 1,000 to and you'll see, I spent way too much money on applying to grad school the first time. So the first time I did not take the advice of some of my friends and advisors and ask for fee waivers. Fee waivers are, so the thing is, they do not go to the department that you're applying to. They go to the graduate school, who for all intents and purposes will never know you. If you're a master's student, they take your money. If you're a PhD student, they never know who you are. The graduate school and the math department or CS department have the chair of the math and CS department knows something about grad school, but they never know who you are. They give you your degree at the end, but there's no communication. So my second time around, I reached out to the graduate schools, and you'll see my success rate. But let me show you the first time. So as a senior, applying to grad school, because the Fulbright, like I mentioned, the application is due in like September. You don't hear back until like March, which is like, and you apply to grad school like December, January, and you don't hear until like March. So if you apply to one, you have to like, take a risk, I guess. But I had to, apply to grad school because I didn't think I was going to get the Fulbright. And let me show you, oh no, this is the good one. Checklist, I guess. No, applying to. So this was my first round going through things. Wow, that's small. I don't need, so I got way too into this. This is more about like, once you get into a program, or maybe two, like compare the cost of living, what you're gonna make. Because if it's Palo Alto and your TA stipend is 20 grand, that's gonna be rough. Or the Bay Area or something like that. Let me just hide these for a second to make it easier to see. And then increase this. So look at those application fees. For each, like, let me make this smaller too, so you can see the names of the schools. One thing to note that I didn't know when I was, although they are going away from the subject tests, so like your math subject tests for GREs, a lot of places are dropping that. That was a pre-COVID thing, like people were dropping that, but now that COVID is a thing, it's going away. I don't know about whether the general GRE is being dropped or not, but if it is the case that you have to send a subject test, just know that it's like a flat rate. So you pay one thing and you send both of the scores. So that's like, I mistakenly made two columns here when I didn't need to. But that's, $27 versus, like, look at all these application fees. They're insane. So as I keep scrolling down, the place I did my REU waived my application fee. So that was like awesome. It reduced my total from $2,000 to $1,950. So I paid, and let me add the GRE stuff, a total of $2,600 to apply to grad school, which was the worst mistake of the last 5 years, at least. So do not do that. You don't have to be as zealous as I was in my supplying the graduate school with my bank statement that said like $12. You don't have to do that. But what you can do is reach out to your financial aid department at your college and have them write something like this. It's super easy. This may be my letter. Yes, so I explained my situation, that I had applied last year and spent all that money. You don't need to say, like, obviously you guys aren't applying twice. You don't need to say that. Just this sentence could be said by anyone. Oh, not last year. The PhD application process is going to be a financial hardship. It doesn't matter. I mean, unless your mom is a hedge fund manager, it'll be a financial hardship. So you're not, being dubious in saying that. So the only thing you do not need to do that. That was a bit much on my part to show them how much money I had, like that I wouldn't be able to. But what I did attach, and this was really easy. All I did was I reached out to my financial aid office and said, "Hey, can you tell them how much money you give me?" And that I wouldn't be able to afford this. And that's all they didn't, they didn't say that. How much they give me. They just said it would constitute a financial hardship. It was like, this took me 2 hours to get from them. It was super easy, and I'll show you the results of applying the second time. I think it was this one. 0, 0, 0. Stanford and UPenn were stingy. They made me pay again. But everywhere, 0, 0, 0s. These were places that so even, here's a good example. Chicago and Cornell, I didn't apply to my first time, but I told them this, and they gave me a fee waiver. But I had to pay to send the GRE scores. It's harder to work with the GRE to get things reduced. So that is like paying the 27 to send schools. That's your, what you should be worried about. Yeah, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So it was wildly successful, and I wish I'd done it the first time, because like I said, it goes to the grad school. It doesn't go to your department. If the grad school says no, you can still apply. Like, it's not like they're going to be like, "Oh, I thought you said you didn't have any money." You can still apply, and it's no big deal. So I felt that it's like a duty of mine to tell you first about money before we get into anything about grad school, because it was very silly for me to spend all that money. The next thing about money is what I already mentioned about PhD programs. There is a really big, so I would bet that at least someone, maybe not. I mean, I learned it as a freshman through kind of following around the seniors and just being like a little brother, and learning that you can get a PhD for free and can get paid for it. That is not the case with most master's degrees. There are exceptions, and I'll mention them, but for a PhD, there's also this component to it, like, it's not really imposter syndrome. It's like self-selection. It's like a imposter syndrome before you get to a place you don't feel comfortable. Like, if you see the word PhD versus master, and you're like, I don't deserve to be in a PhD. Like, I won't fit in. You won't apply, and so you're doing yourself a disservice. Whereas everyone feels like that. So apply. Trust me. The really cool thing about the USA and our PhD route, bachelor to a PhD, is that everyone else is doing the same thing. So you're taking classes your first year, you're like refreshing yourself, getting up to par with anyone coming in with potentially a master's, or maybe they went, like what I worried about was students who went to like Rutgers versus Ursinus, where they could have taken graduate courses in quantum field theory and been at a public university where they can just go to graduate classes. So that was what I worried about, but it's not an issue. I had one of my best friends in graduate school was also from a small liberal arts college, and we did fine. We went to universities that are focused on teaching, so they taught very well, and we know how to learn. So it was just like taking another class. So you can do it. Also, you can leave a PhD program. So I am a perfect example of that. I went into a PhD program, and now I'm gone. I had all intents and purposes to get a PhD and go on to like tenure track academic roles, but for many reasons, predominantly teaching, this for me was like huge. That's what made me go to grad school, the being able to teach while you're a student and a teacher. And I loved it so much that the idea of my particular program is so research heavy that they can only support you teaching for 2 years. So you can't teach for the whole time you're there, which is odd. It's such a well-funded program that I went to. They have a national lab right next door for physics. There's just so much money for research that you have to use it. You can't like use the department for teaching, which at most places they would love for you to do because they pay you not a lot of money and they get a free teacher. Well, not free, but a cheap teacher. So it was just an odd mix. And now I left with a master's degree. I did a master's thesis, and yeah, so there was no, what I was concerned about when I brought this up to my graduate program director in October or something of last year was how do I make this transition? How do I go from the PhD to the master's? Like, I don't pay for what I did last year, but like, do I start paying tuition now? Like how does that work? Nothing. I didn't pay tuition this semester. I finished my master's thesis, and literally on my transcript it still says PhD. It's just like I just get a master's degree, and that's like they know that happens for. Well, if you go to a smaller program that's more close knit, they are maybe more supportive and want that not to happen. But I went to a program with 250 graduate students in the department. So like they were like, oh, okay, just make sure I made the right decision. They talked me through it, and then they're like, okay, you can do that. Like there was no roadblock. I just did it. Yeah, you're not stuck into a PhD program if you don't like it. There is what I'm facing if I went to a PhD program in the US. Because my Fulbright was in the Netherlands, maybe I'll go back there where this isn't an issue. But in a similar way to like if you transferred colleges, you may like lose credits. Like one college may not recognize the other. That's a weird aspect of even though I have a master's degree, if I went to a PhD somewhere in the US, they may make me retake classes or pass a qualifying exam, which I failed 3 times at the other place. So I was like, I am not going to that again. So that's an aspect of that's just another pro to apply to PhDs. Don't apply to masters. There are caveats which I'll mention, but I saw 2 hands up. My second time around, I did because I was already in the Netherlands and I had met people, and I was like, oh yeah, but none straight, which I will mention. So yeah, apply to PhDs, not masters, unless there are a ton of scholarships. Like I'm not super familiar with domestic ones, so ones where you get like a funded master's. I think it would be just like we could do it right now. That's the beauty of screen sharing. Funded master's math. Yes. I'm not certain about a lot of these. Here we go. Rockefeller's good website. Point out any of these if they look awesome. I don't know any of these. Oh, here we go. In general, one thing, this is actually, I'm glad I did this. This is an exception. If you are dead set on a master's, I would recommend looking at places that stop at a master's. Like they don't even offer a PhD program, because then there's no competition with PhD students for funding. Like a lot of places, like my institution, I had friends who were, what's that?
Where did you go?
Stony Brook. So it was awesome, a ton of research, really awesome area. There were like these little intricacies of the requirements that didn't match up with me. but they mentioned that there is available spots. I was curious. Some of my master's friends ended up getting TA roles, but I was like, was that guaranteed to you? And they were like, no, I consistently emailed them until they answered me and gave me something. Like because the program, especially one like mine, where they don't support you after 2 years for teaching, like you have to find a research group. They're less likely to give that to a master's student because they have PhD students, which they promised in their offer letter that they'd give them at least 2 years of teaching. So a place like Wake Forest, which I'm fairly certain, yeah, they don't have a PhD. Yeah. So a place like that, if you're dead set on a master's, would be good. Yeah. Let's see. I pull up my CV. Markers.
No, in the little double die. Middle top.
Answer. I could have just said it verbally, but I'm so I did summer fellows here. Soft rising junior, call it. Then as a rising senior, I did one of those NSF RUs. No.
But yeah, he was an assigned student.
Yeah. I was in a first night student. My advisor here was Italian, and she was awesome. She knew like everyone in the field. She was very thanks. She was very like well connected in the field. And as I was starting to look into grad school, just her talking about Europe and stuff got me thinking about the Fulbright. So like actually really like as soon as I finished this, while I was still there, I worked with her on it. So like August. Oh wow. August, I started looking into, and we'll talk about it right at the end, because it's very similar to applying to grad school. I started looking into applying to Fulbright.
Are you specifically applying to like research program?
Yes, research. So there's research, there's masters. This is another an amazing option if you're dead set on a master's. So when we got there and our whole cohort was having dinner or whatever, those fancy dinners, everyone who did the master's one and I applied for the research one said, oh, I didn't apply for that one because I was scared. It seemed hard. I was like, I didn't apply for the master's one because it seemed hard. Like, so my whole philosophy was everyone wants a master's degree. Who wouldn't, I found it harder to convince an admission committee that I deserve a master's. Whereas my research was with a specific person in a specific university at a specific city, and I explained everything about their research, and I was like, this is so much easier. So for me, I thought that was easier. And what you mentioned is also, you can teach English as a second language, which in the Netherlands, I have no idea why they even fund those. I'm joking, but like everyone in the Netherlands is fluent in English, like even 5-year-olds. So maybe not 5-year-olds, but almost everyone is fluent in English. So I was like, how? That's the other aspect of it. Like if you go to Germany, you need like a novice level of English. If you go to like, I don't know, somewhere not fluent in English, Turkmenistan, like you may need you need fluency. But the Netherlands, it didn't require any. And there are a ton of countries like that, like lots of European, Asian countries, like have almost 100% fluency. Like I barely know Dutch because every time I would try it, they'd be like, just speak English. They would just see me fumbling and yeah. So we'll get to that. Let me get back to the timeline. Yeah, August, I applied like the end of September, maybe conservatively is to say, no, October was the NSF GRFP, which we'll talk about too. September was applying. During my senior year, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Rising. I was like thinking about the talk yesterday, like how I'm going to give it, and I'm like, they're not sophomores, they're done sophomore year. So, you know, like if you just finished your sophomore year or you just finished your, yeah. So that, and then grad school didn't start, like the applications for grad school, the earliest ones, at least in physics, and I'm pretty sure math, is December. Like December 15th. There was one in Canada that was the first, which was annoying. The other aspect of that is that's right around your finals. So if you have fall break or Thanksgiving break, use them for grad school. So yeah, because of that weird gap, and you don't hear about this, you don't hear about all three of them. Sorry for this awful infographic. Until March. So like, sure, I applied to this, but I was like, there's no way to get that. So I have to apply to grad school. And then I miraculously got the Fulbright. So I only got into maybe like maybe two or three of my safety schools. So I didn't get into any of those like dream schools. So I was like, now I have a Fulbright. Why don't I just not go to any of those and apply next year? So then, Netherlands, after I graduated, you graduate, and then like the academic year later, you go to the country. It depends on your research. Like my country was 10 months, ended up being like a year, but like a master's, like it depends on the country. In most countries, other than the UK, where they like rush you through in a year, the master's is 2 years long. Other people, like you can do a research Fulbright whenever. So if you're in your PhD and you're in like your third or fourth year and you start collaborating with someone in Portugal, you can just go to Portugal. Well, you have to apply to it, but you know, like and Nick could do a Fulbright right now. Like you can do a Fulbright at any time. You can do a professor Fulbright. Yeah, so that was a year there, and then I guess December of the next year, I applied to grad school again, and then that's not very helpful. But so yeah, the SUNY school, yeah. I think for all the things that I'm going to tell you about, like the steps that I took to get it, I think it is much easier than they lead on. So one aspect of that is one of the first steps. Well, obviously you guys have done your first step already. You know, being here, you've done, and it's kind of part two as well. Part two is like, it's similar to that thing I mentioned about grad school. Even if you are a rising senior and haven't worked on p-adic numbers yet, but you still really want to do p-adic numbers, you could still apply for the Fulbright and write your research proposal on p-adic numbers. So that's not necessarily like, you don't have to have worked on something you're passionate about to have that. The real, like, this is the entire application is basically this step. Because you cannot just apply to the Fulbright. You have to apply to a country. So you have to determine what country you're applying to specifically. So this is, I'm not as qualified to talk about the master's one, because I think it's like you have to kind of do two things at once. You have to apply to a master's program and apply to a Fulbright. It's like rare that you wouldn't get if you were going to get admitted. Again, I don't really know how those work. I think they're scary. But everyone who I talked to who was there was like, no, it was so much easier. It's just, I guess, not a lot of people know about it. I don't really know what the rationale was about why they thought it was easy. But you have to kind of like, it's similar, like you have to make a case for why you want to do this particular program. And in many ways, it could be very similar to the research. Like you could say, I want to write my master's thesis on this. But I thought it was much easier to do the research one where I, with my RU advisor, because she was European and knew, what countries did really well and stuff like that. Through a combination of her saying, these countries are doing really well in this area. I had this list. This is the list she told me. She said, the UK, the Netherlands, Germany, Japan, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, France, and Canada are all doing really good stuff. Now, the reason I said miraculously is just the name Fulbright. If you apply to the United Kingdom, it's like 0.2% acceptance rate. It's wildly hard to get a Fulbright in. We can actually look at it. It's right here. Also, you have to note the language requirement. So I am not novice in German. I'm not novice in Japan. Japanese or French is more like you have to be like moderately fluent in them. So that's how I knocked off some of those. Whereas what was left, I think, did I mention it? Yes, so Germany, Japan, France, and Switzerland at the time, they might not anymore, they had a novice requirement. So I was like, I can't learn that before I apply because I'm applying in the next month. So then I weighted the acceptance rates. This is where the real numbers start. Because if you were to apply, like I said, to the UK, it would be, then it would be really miraculous if I got it. But let me show you why I ended up, for a multitude of reasons. I mean, I love the politics of the Netherlands and the language and all sorts of, let me, that one, find, France. We don't have, so 21, 22, oops. This is total. So these ones, these named ones right here, where it says university, doctoral research, doctoral, these ones, and these, that's another university. Those are master's ones. These are the open study, like doing a research project. So let's divide 11 by 150. I don't even know it off the top of my head. So it is a 7% acceptance rate, which is like, I don't know, Harvard. Like that's really low. But, well, just to make it more dramatic, I'll show you the UK. Open study, yeah, there are a ton of master's ones. So like you can maybe, no, they're all really hard. I mean, 1 in 14 is yeah, those are really hard acceptance rates. Let's go down here. So 1,000 people applied for, whoops. Where'd it go? Oh. So Nick scoffed, so it must be a big number or a low number rather. 3%. So I exaggerated, it's not a fraction of a percent anymore. It was when I applied. But anyway, if you go and look, manage, I closed the tab. If you kind of compare what, and just by virtue of your advisor for this summer fellow thing, they'll know what countries are good at your field, just because of being in research. You kind of, read the archive or is it MathSciNet or do you use archive? Oh, okay. I've never had a paid account to MathSciNet, so I always just mention archive or Google Scholar or something. Once you kind of balance those statistics with the countries that one of your advisors say, okay, they do good work, like you should look into that. You can find ones that are, and I think it really is that people think that they speak Dutch in the Netherlands. They do, but a lot of them speak English. So my year, it looks like it got a little bit more competitive. Here's a little bit more. My year, just to cut to the chase, mine was 20% acceptance rate. So 1 in 5 people who applied to it got it. It's still not like guaranteed. That's why I said it was like miraculous that I got it, because it was just hard to believe that I was the 1 in 5. But it's much better than the 20 is much higher than 3. 25, 180. Yeah, so that's almost 14% already. That was a few years ago. Yeah, so and that's how I kind of decided on what country. And then once I had the country narrowed down, we do it's the exact same process that we're going to run through for grad schools. You go on a ranking system like this. It's not necessarily accurate. It's just easy because it enumerates every single one of the grad schools. Wow, they rank them all the way up to 160. Whoa. Okay. Wow, they rank everyone. Okay, so they used to do like up to 120 and just like not ranked below that. But now it's everyone. So you do the exact same thing. So this one, it's, I think, just best grad schools. This one is education and then best global. So then you just plug in the country. It helped me because the Netherlands is like the size of half of New Jersey. So they only have like 7 research universities. So I was like, I did the exact same thing that we're going to do, which is I went to the university, I went to the research tab, I looked at who's doing what, do they have someone doing something cool? And then I sent them an email, which is called like a cold email. And it's like, hey, I am applying to this thing called the Fulbright. I would be a free student. Your work is really cool. Here's why I liked it. Here's my CV. What do you say? And I did that. Like, it was quicker than I anticipated. It was like I think I reached out to like 4 people, and then one of them was like, yeah, sure. And that's all they need to say. Like he was very nice in helping me with the research proposal. Like he sent me his research proposal, and I was like, oh, cool. He wrote an affiliation letter, which is just like, if he comes here, he'll have an office. He'll be in my research group, and yeah, we're looking forward to it. And like that's it. Just saying like, yeah, I know that he's doing this. Like, so I'm not just like appearing on someone's doorstep. And that's really it. So it was yeah. Oh yeah. I was like, oh my god, because like the people I similarly to how I'll get to how I think you should apply approach applying to grad schools. What I mean by that is the first time I applied to like over 50%, maybe like 70% safety schools, just because I was so nervous. And the second time I was like, you just need 1 safety school. You need 1. So like if you're a rising junior now, and you're here, then next year you can go to an RU at a place that has a graduate program. That's your safety school. Like I can tell you for a fact that everyone who went to my RU got an offer. They didn't, not all of them went there, but everyone got an offer to go to the PhD for that RU. And similar, like just by virtue of you guys being here, if you're a rising junior or a senior, just by virtue of you doing research over the summer, you should not even be looking at 180s. I did that to illustrate a point, but you guys should be starting at like 100. Like that's your safety schools at the minimum, if not higher. What was I doing? Oh yeah. So you should be like, you need like 1 safety school. So like apply to maybe, it depends on how successful you are with fee waivers and how much money you're willing to spend on it, on the application process. But if you apply to 10 schools, or 20, let's just say 20, because I'm pretty confident that fee waivers are based on my success rate, that they're easy to come by. So let's just say you apply to 20, like 4 or 3 should be safety schools. Like you just need to get into one of them, especially if you end up in an RU program next year that like has a grad school, because they'll probably just let you in there. And then you're free to shoot for the stars with other grad schools. So that's what I did the second time. And I did a similar thing when reaching out to people for the Fulbright. I reached out to like really, really famous people, and just reached out to really, really famous people at these universities. Because if they didn't reply or said no, I just went down the list and applied because of the nature of the Fulbright. They not only, I mean, this is never officially stated anywhere, but I assumed that if I had a famous name attached to my application, things would get pushed along. My professor is like, everyone in physics kind of knows his name in the Netherlands. Like, he's very famous. So having his letter of affiliation, having my grant proposal, clearly explaining his work and saying how I'm going to follow it, I think meant a lot. So I applied. I reached out to only like super famous people at first. So as soon as one of them said yes, it was like the third try. I was like, oh yes, we're golden, because that's the hard part, really, of applying to the Fulbright. Like the writing of the essay, it's like the NSF is really brutal. It's like a 1-page or 2-page limit. We'll get to that later. But I can pull it up actually. It's maybe here somewhere. Oh, but just to let you know about these so-called cold emails, they are not. So yeah, this was already too long. My goal in reaching out to you is so that you can mentor me. It would be, I mentioned that it's free. You should give like a link to the Fulbright, because my particular advisor didn't know what it was. He was like, okay, what is that? And I talked about his research. I talked about what I'd done recently that is kind of related to his work. This is unnecessary. I could have just sent my CV, which I did. Yeah, and so I definitely should have explained what the Fulbright was, and specifically mentioned the word free, because they don't have to pay for anything. You can have an office or not. Like, that city is beautiful. I could have just worked at a library. Yeah, so he thought I was like getting a PhD there or something like that. And yeah, so I explained that. I should have put it in the first email. And yeah, that's it. Like, once you mention free, I can give you office space. That's all they do. They have plenty of it. So really, and he just kind of made edits on my statement of grant purpose. The other one, a personal statement, is what you do for grad school. So like that, the only thing extra for applying to things like this is, well, if you want to do the research one, you find someone to say, cool, here's what I'm working on, you can also work on it. And you write a proposal to do stuff, which ended up being something I'll mention with this as well. If you apply as an undergraduate, it's very similar to the grant proposal for the Fulbright. My kind of level of comfortability with the high level of mathematics and physics that he was doing meant that I wasn't like a PhD student for their group. Like I wasn't like contributing to the forefront of research for them. I basically ended up writing a review paper of his old work. So like that's not, and that wasn't what was in my grant purpose. My grant purpose was doing this and this and doing his work. And I just wasn't like advanced enough to do that. That doesn't mean like I'm not, that's they spell it out more succinctly here. I just got it verbally from my kind of Fulbright contact person, but they mention it here that you can kind of change. I might as well just talk about this now that I'm talking about it. So it's basically funding for grad school. You can apply to it and you get, I think it's like 35,000 a year. It may have gone up, inflation and stuff. No, so yeah, you get 34 and the university that you go to gets 12. So if you get this, every university is going to let you in because they're like, oh my God, look, not only do we get money, we don't have to pay it. So it's huge. Where was I? I was told that it's easier, and it's kind of confirmed that it is easier to apply when you're a senior. The reason for that is you don't know where you're going to grad school yet. So you can very similar to like my Fulbright grant purpose thing, and my NSF grant proposal was so far-fetched that like there's no way, like maybe one person at the grad schools that I was applying to could have potentially supervised something like this. Like it was, I basically was like, all right, I did this, I did like atomic stuff here and like black hole stuff here. How can I relate those two? And I did. Like there is work going on about that, just not at the place I was applying to. So I was like, I'll just write it on that. It's all as a senior, they're really judging you on your background, your writing ability, and the feasibility of your project, and like how thought out it seems, because you don't know where you're going yet. So if I wrote that and didn't go, like for instance, the person who would have been able to do that was at University of Chicago. Unless I got into University of Chicago, I would be doing something completely different for my PhD. And you can apply to this thing, and like just like the Fulbright, and not do what you propose. So that's why people say it's easier to win as a senior, because they judge you less harshly. So the way that this grant works is you can apply twice. You can apply once as an undergraduate and once as a graduate student. You can apply either your first or second year. It gets harder as you get older. I don't know who would be able to win it as a first year graduate student, because you are swamped with classes and just trying to get a research advisor. Like unless you go to a smaller, more close-knit program, which I advise heavily, you don't come in with an advisor. Like you have to do your classes. You maybe do a reading project with them, like a small little independent study type thing, and then they say, okay, yeah, you can join my group and I'll pay you. But that's like totally fluid. You can even and doing some digging on this last night, I was kind of shocked. So this is just confirmation about like you can't say that you're applying for math and then go do economics. Like you can't change the entire degree, but you can do p-adic numbers and then topology. Like you can change, they call it a minor field of study or a major field of study. Yeah, so I'm a new fellow. I propose this specific project. Do I have to do that? No, you do whatever you want. If you apply as a senior, you don't know where you're going to college, where you're going to grad school, so they can't like hold you to what you propose. They're judging how well your proposal is. Also the broader impacts, like they make sure that you're thinking about things like how this can affect society and your community around you. And you can also, this is something I learned, is that you can change programs. So this is like, if you're right, so the application for this is October. So you apply to it. It's not on your CV, or maybe like you mentioned, I have applied to the NSF GRFP. I would recommend that, saying like I'm hoping to get this. But like if you start to hear in like January, February that you've been rejected from some of your dream schools, and then in March you get the NSF, tell everyone. Like if you haven't heard back from the school, tell them. I would say even if you get declined, unless it's April 15th, like the kind of end date for making decisions, tell them. Be like, I know I got rejected, but I have an NSF now. But I don't want to guarantee, but I'm pretty sure they would like think about reversing that decision, because then you're free. They don't have to pay you, you get money, they get money. So yeah, I thought it would be really, yeah, so this was more like during the application process, can you change your school? But I realized you can also transfer. So in this case, if you like, don't feel comfortable reaching out to places that declined you, you can go to whatever school you're accept. I highly recommend telling all the ones who haven't told you anything yet, like accepted or denied. Tell them you got this, because that greatly increases your chances. But I thought it was hilarious that you can transfer. So like you can go to you can get it. Say you only get accepted to a safety school, and it's like March, or it's, yeah, you've gotten rejected from everyone. The NSF for some reason doesn't tell you until April, and everyone's like, oh, sorry, we're all like, we filled everything. You can go to one of your safety schools you get into, and then just like leave. You can go and get like a you can go to because of the timeline of this, it kind of sometimes that may happen. So apparently you can also transfer. Yeah. Yep. And it follows you. Yep. It doesn't apply. So the hidden answer there is that there is no tuition for a PhD. When you get into a PhD program, like it's there, but it's like you never pay it. So when you are a first year or second year, depending on your program, if you go to a smaller program like some of the ones I mentioned, where you can teach the whole time you're there, your department pays the tuition. Like there's no like, the grad school doesn't charge your department, and the department, at least I don't know, the department doesn't, like, you get a check and you get a check back. But so you never pay tuition when you're a PhD student. You do if you're a master's, unless you can find some kind of funding. So like, for instance, even at a place where you can get, like Wake Forest, for instance, where there's no PhD students, you may be guaranteed a TA spot, but you do still have to pay tuition. So you have to make sure the TA stipend is more than your tuition. You should never, and this is like one of my main things I try to tell to everyone, you should never pay for grad school. You guys are in the sciences, which is like a beautiful thing that in the US you should not be paying for grad school. Especially like a PhD program, you don't. Like you can go straight from a bachelor to a PhD program. While you're taking classes, you're also a TA. You're teaching in some capacity, and you get paid for that, and you don't pay tuition. So like, for instance, I mean, you're not like living large. I think my first year was 23,000. The next was like 27, because I took on some extra stuff. But like, that's not zero, and I'm not in debt. So when you go to a PhD program, you don't pay tuition. Yeah. So this is extra, because let's just math PhD stipends. They are dependent on location. Mine wasn't. Long Island is expensive. They didn't. But like I mentioned, Palo Alto, like that's probably one of the highest places. Let's do overall pay. No. Well, yes. So that's the thing. It's the let's just call it NSF. I don't remember what the Graduate Research Foundation. What's the P? Program. Okay. They only, I think it's only 3 years. So like, if your PhD is, because of how it works in the US, you don't go to a master's then a PhD if you want to do things in math or CS or sciences. You go straight from a bachelor to a PhD. So it could take 5, 6, 7 years. You get NSF money for 3 years. So you can teach for your first 2, get paid like a normal grad student, and then do it. That's how most people do it. Some people do it the other way. They don't want to teach. I think it's like harmful in the long run if they want to go into academia. If they don't waste your time. You could potentially, people at Stony Brook as well have gotten their PhD in 4 years. They've just like been successful with grants and stuff, and they especially like this, you don't it's a similar situation to the Fulbright thing, because if you have this, you can approach a research advisor and say, I'm free. Can I work on what you're working on? And as long as you can keep up, they're just like, cool, free student. Whereas in other situations, you have to approach them, convince them that you can be of help to them, and then they pay you. So it's like it's a hard like dynamic to work with. But you can. What I guess I didn't click on negative pay. What does this even mean? Well, yeah. Well, I guess Boston is. What is that a month? I don't know. Cornell. Yeah, so I can tell you that mine per month was 2021. So that's Boston. It's a little bit more pricey, arguably. Long Island's pretty pricey too. So yeah, depending on your program, and that's where like once you get offers to places, like you're like, okay, $36,000 isn't actually that much at Stanford. 25,000 in Virginia is like way better. You know, like stuff like that. If you know, I think you shouldn't worry about that, because what I ended up realizing is I'm going to be poor as a grad student, so don't weigh things based on like a few extra $1,000. So yes, I think it would have been. I was just so busy my first year because I was you know, trying to get past these. I highly recommend you try to find somewhere that doesn't have qualifying exams. A lot of places are doing away with them. They're basically like exams on everything. So like your first year, you have these required courses. They're like just, you know, maybe I don't know, topology, analysis, algebra, just like general things at a much higher level. And then in your second, third, fourth, you have to take like a qualifying exam on them. They're starting to drop those because they realize how annoying they are, how stressful they are. And yeah, it kind of precluded me from, I think they use that word right, like not doing extra things like that. Like I was so enamored with my teaching that I was like, that's my extra thing. Yeah.
So I don't know. You like working on the
more in depth. Yeah, more in depth. So with regards, especially if you are in a PhD program, grades are, I don't want to say not important. You obviously need to pass, but the bar for passing, like, so I'll preface this with saying that midway through the semester of the last 3 semesters, I was like, I'm going to fail my classes. They're very hard, and there's a lot of curving that goes on, which I don't like. I think you should just grade so that the students know what they have at all times. But you know, the passing at most graduate programs is a B. So you would find most people are A's and B's, and then there's like 1 F. Like they don't even do C's and D's. It's just like it's like, so passing or not passing. And I got exactly a B every single class. I think maybe an A in like the independent study, but like absolute, and that's totally fine. If I had continued in the program, other than like some maybe older, more like pedantic people who would have cared about grades, I heard of one person, one advisor who people knew that actually cared about your grades. So as long as you pass things, it's completely fine. And that's why, like I was very not. It was really just the amount of work that took me by surprise. Like in when I was at science, I took like 5 classes all the time. You know, I always took one more than was required. And then it's like like 3 classes is like insane. Like take 3 like especially your required courses, those like first year analysis, topology, geometry. Taking 3 of them at one time is insane. highly recommend against it. I really wanted to push myself to that because I knew I was going to have trouble with these qualifying exams because the program that I went to had them. So I just really pushed myself in that respect and then kind of held off on any research stuff. So it's very different if it happens to be like a master's program, like where you are kind of, as I've heard from my friends in the master's program who have since, been admitted to the PhD program. So they stay in the same university and just go to the PhD program. They are judged a little bit more critically on grades. So in that sense, it is better to take one required class, one like elective. So that's like your second year, third year classes, and then research and get an A in the required class and just focus on research. So that was, of the successful master's students, that they were like, yeah, you should not, like, it really doesn't serve people, because once you have the master's degree at the same program, they're looking for you to start in a research group. And that's the point of applying to the PhD program. So if you have an advisor who is impressed with you as a master's student, they're going to argue on your behalf that you should go into the PhD program. If you can ace a class in grad school, they're going to be like, oh, you can do well in the other ones. I am very impressed with any of my friends who got A's. Like B is like pretty standard. So yeah, doing well on less stuff was definitely a better strategy. And even I was jealous of my friends in doing what they were doing in the master's program. I knew I was going to have trouble with the qualifying exams. In the grand scheme of things, even at a place like, on paper, Stony Brook makes it like seem very scary. If you fail your comprehensive or qualifying exams, you have to retake them and retake them again and like you have to pass them to continue. And the grad program director, admittedly maybe biased, but most of the students also corroborated this, that no one has gotten kicked out from failing their competency, even though on paper it reads like that. Like if you don't pass them, that's it. And so it was ultimately research that kept people in. Like they would, as they were, continually, they did their classes, they passed their classes. So to me, and most graduate programs are going towards this. If you pass your classes, that's it. You don't have a qualification. You can start looking into research. But because of passing the classes and looking into research, they're doing what a graduate student is supposed to do, and they just keep trying these. And that's what I was planning to do. I was just gonna, because I knew I was good at research. I'd done my classes. I'm very good with classes and long-term homework and stuff like that. What I was planning on doing, which is the strategy of most people, and it turns out you don't get kicked out for this. You just impress a research advisor, keep working with them, pass your classes, and just continue to fail the comprehensive exams, which is what I was on the route to. I failed it like 3 times. And in some way, there's like, and there is a little caveat, as I discovered in the fine print, that you just have an oral qualifying exam, which is just a way for them to say, like, ask you a few questions and be like, okay, just fine, go. Just go, just continue on. Like as I've discovered, like no one gets kicked out because of it. Of course, that doesn't take into consideration like my own personal, like when I failed them for the 3rd time, I was like, that's it. I'm not taking them again. I'm leaving with a master's, and I want to teach like now. Like I don't want to wait to teach. And so that doesn't take into account the stress that it puts on you in potentially. So I highly recommend looking for places about it, because there are a lot of them. Yeah, yep, yep. Yeah. Did you say what's next? I was miraculously, I keep using that word. I was lucky in, I mentioned I wanted to teach immediately. So I applied far and wide to high schools, community colleges, back in the Netherlands, their version of a community college, although it's like a bachelor's degree granting place, international high schools in the Netherlands, And I saw through applying to these community colleges some very similar, actually, my physics advisor here, what he did after he finished his PhD at Bryn Mawr, which is very close by, he got a visiting professor role, which is like, because of the nature of these small liberal arts colleges, they offer a lot of sabbatical. So that means that their professors can take a semester off, a year off to do research and travel and all sorts of things like that. So it's one half that these small liberal arts colleges need people to come on every few years. And it's another half altruistic, because fresh PhD students who the go-to route is to do a postdoc, which is just research. It's like a PhD with none of the like bureaucracy. It's just like you have a doctorate, you do your research. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to teach and do research on the side. So they offer these visiting professor roles, and it's a great opportunity after your PhD before you get tenure at a place like a tenure track. So I reached out to the exact same role because they've been around for decades. You know, they just every 3 years a professor goes on sabbatical, and if you have 5 professors, every so often you are down, 2 professors. And it was at Swarthmore. It was the exact one that my advisor had. And I reached out and said, like, hey, I know this is probably crazy, but like maybe I could be like a lecturer or something, like a visiting lecturer. Like I don't have a PhD, and this job literally says PhD required in it. So it's probably crazy, but it would be really cool. Like here's my teaching background, and in the first 2 years of grad school, I had a ton of teaching experience. Like even though they don't let you go beyond the 2 years at my program, like they really let you do it really heavily in your first 2 years. So I was grateful for that. And she told me it was the exact same person who hired my advisor 10, 15 years ago. And she was like, if you had applied last year, you may have been in the finalists because of this like great resignation, as people are calling it. Like a lot of people are leaving their current job and looking for higher paying, less hours, stuff like that. So a lot of people are leaving, and their applications, like I was privy to like the hiring of physics people here. They would get like hundreds of applications for albeit those were tenure track positions, and then hundreds, and then maybe like 10 for a phone interview and like 3 for an in-person, and they're not getting that anymore, especially for like visiting things like this, because there's no like, you don't have tenure. It's a fixed, I'm only guaranteed 1 year. So as soon as I got that email, I was like, oh my God, I could be applying to things like this. And so I started applying to things like that, and I got one. So it's a small liberal arts group of colleges in California that I'll be looking at for at least a year. They have like the potential of renewing it for a year or 2. The Claremont colleges.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, they're really, really awesome group of schools. It's like east of LA a little bit. Yeah. So these are a bunch of other, like I mentioned, the Fulbright. That's like anywhere. Like you can do, like we mentioned, it's not here anymore, is it? No, the statistics. Like you can do a Fulbright anywhere. I don't know what that stands for, but it's basically a Fulbright in Germany. There are these things called excellence scholarships. This is a way to get a master's through a scholarship. There are a lot in Switzerland. I applied to one in Switzerland. There are a few in the Netherlands. Utrecht has a really good one. France has a few of them. I think Japan has 1 or 2. Sweden may have one. The Schwarzman is in China. There are 2 Chinese ones, a ton of UK ones. So these are similarly, like the UK is just very hard to get grad school in. The Fulbright is like a 3%, and these are probably all, I think the Mitchell may be Ireland actually. Yeah, and also the other thing to mention is I didn't answer this question, but someone asked it earlier. I didn't end up applying to any places in Europe or Asia without a scholarship attached to it, but you can. So just to give you an example of the Netherlands, my rent was $300 or 300 euros, which compares to like $1,500, $2,000 here, $1,000 here maybe. Well, in grad school, actually, what you should be doing, another money thing, is once you get accepted to some place, looking at the graduate, you just type in, well, let's go to Facebook first, which is a brilliant resource to find cheap housing, because housing is your primary expense in the US. Not marketplace, groups. And then X University. I already follow this group. But just type in the university and graduate housing, and you will find rooms in houses with other grad students. So if it's a 5-bedroom house and like the rent from the landlord is $3 grand, you can split that and it's a couple $100, not over, like, do not, unless money is not an object. And I had a few friends who were ballers and ended up with an apartment. No one gets an apartment in grad school. Everyone is in a house with other grad students. So very good resource on Facebook for that. Guarantee, these are like I was mentioning with oh, I already did it. Okay, so this is what we were looking at earlier, that pro fellow one right here. First, what's this one? Again, clicked on the thing. Yeah, so Wake Forest, masters only. Fully funded TA. Did they mention anything about? So the thing to worry about here is I'm fairly certain with a master, unless it's a scholarship. If it's a scholarship that waives your tuition and pays you, that's different. Oh, here it is. Villanova has scholarships, tuition waivers. So that's pretty huge. A tuition waiver, and that's basically a PhD program in terms of finances. Yeah, so maybe if I just Control F, scholarship, no, guess not. The word scholar. Actually, that's a really good master's program in physics as well. San Francisco State. Cool. Okay, so yeah, this is another. Again, you'll have access to this PDF. And those are really, like, I would really highly recommend that you just like believe me that you guys are competitive, way above the 100 level on the US News. Okay, so now I've kind of just generally blathered, but the hard aspect of applying to grad school and what takes a lot of time, because once you apply to one, the application is almost identical to every single one of them. Like, you write a personal statement and what you think is cool about this program. So the only aspect that differs, let's see if I have it up here. There's like one section in the whole application that changes. No, I don't. It should be on share like that, actually. Overleaf, yes. Just to give you an example, like I had one, well, I ended up switching them just to get, these are all jobs. Here we go. Yeah, so they're all this, like the personal statement, you write once and you send it to everyone, unless they ask for like a specific thing. They call it, sometimes different things. Let's see, additional information sometimes. Letter. Sometimes they had like diversity statements. I might be confusing that with jobs. Anyways, they call them different things. That's basically a personal statement. Statement of, what am I trying to say? I think it's statement of purpose. I'm trying to get a research type one, because that's the only thing about every document that changes. Yes, so this is the only field that changes for every single university. Everything else is the same. So here is where you do your research into the place. So once I go to my Excel sheet, I'll explain it, but you go to a particular program, and that's why this is so helpful. It enumerates everything. So you can, I didn't know Claremont had a math program. Cool. Like I said, I would not just by virtue of you guys being here, you probably should be starting around here for safety schools and going up. You just click on one. So, well, you don't have to click on it. You say University of Miami, math, don't judge me, spelling, grad. Bulletin is usually not helpful. I want the department website. Here we go. So especially, let's see, the first most important aspect is here. Usually there's a tab that's called research, and it basically just sends you to this. I'm not sure which will be easier, so let's do research and faculty listing. Some faculty like pages, like maybe sometimes it says people, you can click on the faculty page and they'll like tell you what their research topic is, so you can kind of sift through all of them. This is also, once you get into places, this is super helpful. Like current graduate students are really the only thing that matters. Other than, I guess I didn't have open houses, COVID is happening. But open houses are obviously helpful. I like that they have this here. Okay, research. Yeah, so this is exactly what I was looking for. So you click on the research page, and then I, for some reason, pulled periodic numbers out of my hat earlier. So let's just see if anyone has periodic numbers. What field would periodic numbers be? Number 3. Would it be in algebra, maybe? Algebraic geometry, combinatorics. I know some string theory people do periodics. It's just click and paste. Just to judge critically, if this were like your safety school, like just because there are like 100 plus places, let's just say below 50 and above 100 is like your safety region. That's still 50 places. And if you're applying to 10, 20, you should be applying to max 5. So when you're looking at safety schools, the fact that I don't see periodic numbers on this, that's enough. Just drop it. Unless you like love Miami or really want to go to a particular place or have some affiliation with it. If it doesn't mention periodic numbers somewhere, just drop it. Like if you have a field, and it's much easier if you have that periodic numbers, or the other aspect of it is if you did let's say you did differential geometry in here, your summer fellows, or next year you did differential geometry and you hated it. You hate it? Okay. That's my like yeah.
Thank you.
Differential geometry and so you see here, like that's my bread and butter. Like the kind of the relationship between differential geometry and Lie groups, and that's where I like. But anyway, so if you did that and you say you hate it, you just say, okay, don't look at those. Like it makes it a little bit easier. Obviously, it would be easier if you really like periodic numbers and wanted to do something like that. Or just in general analysis, or in general differential geometry, like having a general, if you really liked a class, like you don't have to have a specific research topic. You can just if you took a class on dynamics or biology or something like that, then like knowing that they have a category of that is huge. So the fact that he has a Wikipedia page is, in general, you'd think it's good. It's usually not good. So in this case, that's not a problem. The one thing I was going to mention is if they're 80, not a good advisor. In general, so there are some 80-year-olds who are putting out 5 papers a year. They're an exception. It's unfortunate, but some people's advisors die when they're in grad school, in which case you either have to kind of finish on your own. The grad schools are very accommodating. They just let you go to someone else. But in general, that's like a rare circumstance. I meant like most 80-year-olds are not publishing 5 papers a year. They're publishing like nothing. Or they're like called, maybe we'll see it on Miami. Maybe faculty. What was it? They would be called like emeritus, I think is how you pronounce it. Not good advisors. They're like about to retire. Let's see. So the reason I said, because I glanced down as soon as this came up, that this would be a not bad advisor. So this would be awesome if you had this as an advisor. He just got a breakthrough prize in 2014, but you mentioned, or you look up here, and he got a Fields Medal. So he is going to be extremely hard to get as an advisor. He is either insanely busy, which we can find by doing this, copying and pasting his name. He's super famous, so he might not have a Google Scholar, might not even need one. Usually younger people have Google Scholar because they're trying to like impress people. No, archive. I don't have a math sign-out account, so I can't use that. Oh, that's really weird. Okay. Whatever. What's this? Yeah, so I don't have something. Just in general, a bad sign that it hasn't been updated since 2008. So like, again, being super critical of things. Like when you have 100 schools you can possibly apply to, just be as critical as possible. Like if something doesn't look good, if this website looked like it was made in the 90s, just don't even look. Just like if they don't want you to go there and they don't put work into it, just don't even click on these, research and stuff like that. So that was kind of an anomaly that we clicked on a Fields medalist. Where was the other one? Let's just click on somebody. Younger guy, so he probably has a Google Scholar. Google Scholar is easier to use than the archive, but the archive works as well. It's not loading for some reason. We can also just copy their name. There we go, Miami. So then they automatically do it by citation. So you can see his most popular paper was cited a bunch in 2009. It's much more helpful if you click on this year tab, because then you can see, so this is a bad sign, that you're seeing something that, like obviously you can only infer things like this, but I don't know, maybe guess that this person was an assistant, which means they don't have tenure. So when it says assistant, that means they are currently trying to get tenure. This is super enticing, because if you did this with someone who said assistant, it would be like 5 publications a year, or a publication a year at least. Just like trying to stay at the forefront. They're advising a lot. It's different at a small liberal arts college, where it's more like advising and teaching, and that's how you get tenure, some research. But at a place that has a graduate program, research is more heavily weighted. So it could potentially be that this person got tenure in 2017 and hasn't done anything since. But in general, like barring this case, that word is a good one to look for advisors. That means they have tenure, but they are not a full professor. So full professors are where you should start to be like. There's nothing bad about full. That means they've done really well. They've gotten a promotion. They've been active in research, advising people. I would say be wary of assistant, because they may not have time. So their livelihood depends on them getting tenure so they can continue their job. So they may not have time for advising. And so if you're like me and want someone who's going to micromanage you and tell you exactly what to do, they're not going to, if it's a smaller program and they weigh advising more heavily, they may look forward to that, but a bigger program is different. Yeah, so this is the other super pivotal thing that I should have said way earlier. Safety school does not mean bad school. And your objective as you're doing this, and that's why you're kind of looking again, start at 100. You don't need to start at 180. Looking at places like 100, just because it's a safety school, like we just clicked on Miami and there was a field medalist, and it was what was Miami like? I don't remember. Here. Oh, it's over here. Yeah, so not like there's a field medalist at a 90. These numbers are just numbers. It's like the general department. So your objective is to go through these things and find if you like PIATIC numbers, and this is also where your advisors at REUs and summer fellows and things like that, if you end up liking what you do, they know who the good people are at different programs, and they can point you to them and say like, oh, like, sure, Harvard has someone really good at PIATICs that Harvard's really hard to get into. So they can also know who is at Kansas State or George Washington or Oregon State, like who does the type of work that you're interested in. And also, like, you can be candid with your summer fellows or your RU. If especially towards the end of it, be like, I hated what we did this whole time. Like, you don't feel like trust me, like people, especially at Ursinus, and likewise, I'm sure at RUs will appreciate the opportunity to advise you. So if that means telling them that you don't want to do what their research is, they don't, you're not going to be their grad student. So it's totally fine to say things like that and to ask for their help just by them being in academia, in math and CS or any sciences. They probably know who good people are in different areas. So like, for instance, I found, I wanted to, last year, when I was giving this talk, I just kind of bumbled around to find hidden gems. But one way to find hidden gems is, why isn't it here? I could have sworn. I did it here somewhere. Oh, here's another aspect of things. I also, this is way too much effort. I highly recommend you don't, but safety schools, I recommend you do. Emailing the people you think are cool there. Just to say like, hey, your work is really cool. Actually, I think I saved it just to have this ready. It's really cool when people, because like it happened all the time. People at Harvard and Yale would respond, and I'd be like, oh my God, like they're talking to me, and a black hole is named after them. And it was really cool. That's not as important, because at a place like that, you have to get in, perform well, and like them responding to you doesn't guarantee anything. At a small place, it might, like them responding to you, especially at a and so when I say at a safety school, you should be reaching out to them because it's a safety school. So as a safety school, you want it to be like, again, be super critical. So if something rubs you the wrong way, just move on to another one. I think I put it here. Yeah, here it is. That is so funny. That's the guy that's the one person who would have been able to do the atomic and black hole stuff. That's him. And he replied. Yeah, so that's cold atoms and anti-de Sitter space is literally what I was just talking about. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so this was when I was in the Netherlands and I was talking about that. This is really the only thing you have to, like, so my emails were much longer my first year when I didn't know what I was doing. And the second time I applied, it was just, I'm interested in your stuff. It's cool. I'm a senior at this place. I'm planning on applying. My goal in reaching out to you is, do you aim in taking on a student in the next 2 years? Like that's really just all. And if you reach out to, even if it's Harvard, if you reach out to, and somehow every single person you reach out to replies to you and they say no, don't apply to Harvard. Like that's the easy way to weed things out. So it's like, that's why I did it for top schools too. I did it more my first year. Like I rarely did this. I only did this for the new schools I was applying to my second time around. I did it to I sent like 150 emails the first time I applied. They're all basic. Like the only thing that changes again is this. It's just, hey, your paper, blah, blah, blah was cool. But I did that because I was paying so much money. Like I didn't have this fee waiver knowledge that you can just not pay the fee. And I wanted to make sure I was spending money on something worthwhile, because if everyone at Harvard I was interested in was like, yeah, no, I've always had 5 graduate students and I just took on my next one. So I can't do it. It's a financial thing. It's not, they don't want you. It's not personal. So I made sure that I had at least a few people at each place that said like, yeah, I have room in the next few years, which in general they do. It's just a financial check.
Jason, I'm just looking up against the clock and I want to make sure that everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Guys to dinner.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe like give some bullet points of the last.
Yeah, totally. Some of the kind of hidden gems I mentioned, the way I did that was just, unfortunately, this US News, you can specialize things, but it only gives you the top like 10 or so. So you can kind of go to a specific thing, and yeah, it goes to 12, which in many cases, these are all the best schools in the country. So there's no hidden gems here. All of these are insanely good schools. So like there's no, but I found through doing this last night that algebra, number theory, and applied math have some hidden gems. So for instance, let's see the most dramatic one. I think these two. North Carolina State and University of Arizona are ranked like 50th, but they're in the top categories in their particular field. So that's really cool. Here's another weird aspect. In general, like when you say the word Lehigh, especially in Pennsylvania, people are like, ooh, what a good school, when it's like that would potentially be one of your safety schools because of like the rankings. And then if you say like, oh yeah, I'm going to University of Minnesota, people are like, why? Like, so if you have that like desire for some sort of prestige, just note it. Like don't say like, oh, only apply to things that sound good. Like if you want, yeah, do that. Yeah, so again, welcoming thing. Who graduated recently? You can see that their advisors have room. Do they make you do the subject test? Also, is there a research page? Like when the Fields medalist, like if he didn't have a Fields medal, I would say he's awful because like you can't find anything about him on the internet. Are they active? Are they old? Do they have tenure? Be super critical on the first pass as you're just going through things. Again, all research is good research. You guys just being here is like super helpful. Either you like what you're doing or you don't and can neglect it. Like I mentioned before, don't apply to 70% safety schools, at most 25. And like I said, some of the first deadlines are in December. So that's like right when your finals are. And then like once you get into grad school, how do you get the advisor? Like unless it's a small program where they're like in their application letter, maybe like for the RU, for instance, my advisor called me, like they called me, not the department or whatever. If that happens, then that's, you know, a really cool sign that you don't have to kind of, they call it like courting. It's weird. It's weird. Like you have to convince them to let them on. You have to like show that you know your stuff. So, you know, asking them, you know, for small projects and doing them persistently. And really what I would recommend is, because I liked their work so specifically, I was like, I'll just do anything you're like, just tell me. I would recommend like looking at the material more so. That is not necessary. And yeah, just older graduate students is really your main source of resource when you get to something. That was ultimately what led me to going to this big program, because there were a million grad students who were like, oh yeah, we have like cookouts and we have all these things and it's huge social, like it's 250 grad students, and just how willing they were to talk. And yeah, we already covered the NSF and the Fulbright, which were the last two things. Meme, Fulbright, yeah, already written on the board. But yeah, you guys will totally get this PDF. I'm sorry I took so long. I was starving. Tell me, yeah, questions. You can go to anything. And this is also a recording, so you guys will get this as well as the this one.
Is it good to name people when you are
I did.
like?
Yeah.
same in purpose?
Yeah. Where is it? Yeah. And not, don't name one person. Don't say, I want to work with, what's his first name? I think it's Donald. I want to work with Donald Morloff. And if I don't want to go there. Like, not that. I list, you know, like, especially the safety schools, that's a little bit harder. Sometimes there is just one person there. I would highly recommend just say, like, if there is only one person, if they're a small school, they'll understand. But mention like you're kind of interested in other things as well, even if it's just one person. And if it's that small, you'll probably just be able to get that one person. But like at University of Santa Barbara, it's very similar to Stony Brook. There are a million grad students, but by virtue of that, there are also a million people doing cool work. So.
Any other questions? Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
We'll see everyone tomorrow at 11.